Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support my channel. I appreciate every single one of you so very much. My dog is in here with me today, so if you guys hear any kind of like crazy noises, it very well might be him. Today is the 69th episode of my Palette Roulette series, in which I let an app pick a palette that I use for the week and come back to you and talk to you guys about the palette that was chosen by the app, and then we choose another palette. This week's episode is brought to you by Starbucks. This week's episode, we are talking about the Smashbox Full Exposure palette. This very well is the oldest palette in my collection. I do believe I picked this palette up way before I ever really started messing with makeup, and this color story should tell you everything that you need to know. This palette did go for, I believe, $48 when I initially picked it up, and it came with a palette, a little dual-sided brush that fit right in here that I still have because it's actually a pretty dang good brush, and a deluxe mini size of their Smashbox 24-hour eyeshadow primer, which was my favorite eyeshadow primer for a very, very long time. This palette is no longer for sale in most scenarios. It is still for sale on Smashbox.com for $52. It does come with the eyeshadow primer and the dual-ended brush that it, originally came with. It does have 4.8 stars on Smashbox. It did have 3.4 stars on Sephora, but I could not find how many reviews Sephora had because Sephora no longer sells this palette. It also had 4.6 stars on Ulta, and again, could not find the reviews for Ulta because Ulta no longer sells this palette either. The Smashbox website did have 35 reviews that catered to that 4.8 stars. It is a cruelty-free palette. There are 14 shades. There are 7 shimmers, 7 mattes in here. The shimmers very much so coordinate with the mattes in this, and they are all neutral in tone, both warm and cool, but leaning more cool toned than warm. This palette does have 0.49 ounces in it, or 14 grams. So each one of these pans is just over 0.035 ounces, which isn't too shabby, but it's also not the normal size of shadow pan, honestly. I think this shadow could go very easily from what people consider daytime looks to what people would consider nighttime looks, just because you can get a super sultry eye look out of this, but you can also get a super no makeup kind of look out of it, a very basic eye look out of it, which I found to be the case. I did take some singles with me over this last week, and there was an eye look that I did that I was so sad that at the end of the day when I was taking the makeup off, I realized I did not get a picture of. And it was probably one of my favorites for the week. I used this cream shadow every single day to lay down over the top of my primer. When I was using primer with this palette, I did use this black every single day. It is really basically almost the only shade in the palette that really deepens up any kind of eye look in the outer corner or the outer V. I did use this brown almost every single day. I used this brown every single day. It is a palette that works well, I think, for any skin tone because it's not too cool and it's not too warm. It really does lean towards any skin tone using this. But what I will say is that the darker shades in this are not super blendable. The palette itself is super chalky. The shimmers up there lend to a lot of fallout, and I have used this palette an awful lot. There are quite a few of the shades in here that have a lot of dips in them, but like I said, this is probably the oldest palette in my collection, so some of that might be because just the sheer age of the palette. I wish I would have gotten a little more use out of it. But like really, you guys, there's not a whole lot that you can do with this. I will say that it's a great palette for pairing. I think that it is going to be like anybody's go-to neutral palette, or could be anybody's go-to neutral palette. And because it's still for sale on the Smashbox website, I would say it is a decent one, and suggest that if this is all that you're looking for in an eyeshadow palette, this is probably a good one for you. What I will say is if you're new, don't purchase it. It does have some blendability issues. Some of the darker shadows, like these two colors down here and this brown here, can get super patchy when you're trying to blend them in, but the shimmers are beautiful. The shimmers are really beautiful. I do have two different shimmers on my eye look today, not including the one that's in my brow bone, which is this one. I did use this one in my brow bone every single day. I used every single shimmer in this palette this week, and I have to tell you, like, I am really super shocked with how much I love the shimmers in this palette. I've forgotten about how wonderfully they perform, and they really don't crease, which is nice, and their longevity with or without primer is a good 7 to 8 hours. Sometimes I needed a little more longevity out of the palette, and it didn't really perform to that for me, but it was nice. The palette has got this really like rubbery kind of NARS feel to it, but not all at the same time. You can definitely tell that it's cardboard. Percy, it's okay. You can definitely tell that it is cardboard. The back of it does have a nice little QR code in which you can, you know, snap on your phone and get a whole plethora of eye looks. It did come initially with a pamphlet that had like 6 or 7 eye looks on it. I didn't, of course, keep that. This again was bought way back in the day. I think this palette came out in 2013. I don't think I purchased it in 2013, to be honest, but I do think it was probably 2016. So this palette is a good few years old in my collection. It does have a nice size mirror on it. It does bend all the way back, and like I said, it did come with a dual-ended brush that is actually a pretty spectacular dual-ended brush. It's actually everything I wish the ABH dual-ended brushes were. It feels really good, and it does have, I think I still have it over there in my dual-ended brush caddy. It has one side of the brush that's flat and meant for shimmers, and the other side that's super fluffy, made for blending of the mattes in here. I am going to go ahead and swatch these shadows for you really quick. I'm going to do all the shimmers first, and then I will do all the mattes. So none of these have names. They're just S1 through 7 across the top and M1 through 7 across the bottom, signifying shimmers and mattes. So this is S1, S2, S3, and S4. And then we have S5, S6, and S7. And that is the shimmers in the palette. I'm sure that you guys are having a hard time seeing that fourth one clear over there, because it is the one that was used in my brow bone every single day. Let me swatch it again just so that you guys get a decent color story here. All right, is that maybe a little bit better? Yes. So this fourth shade right here is super hard to see, but that is the shade that I used in my brow bone every single day. These two shimmers here on the end are in my eye look today. This is just a really super pretty taupey shimmer, a dark brown shimmer, a kind of like copper shimmer, and this is more of like a rose gold shimmer, and then a really champagne shimmer. Really beautiful shimmers. Not super glittery, which I like, because glitter doesn't look super great on mature eyes. There was quite a bit of fallout with those shimmers, especially the darker ones I noticed it with, but I think there was also with the lighter tones, you just could cover it up easier because they were light. You could brush them off easier. With the darker tones, it was harder to cover up, harder to get off your face. So, and then for the mattes, We have mattes all in the same like color family as the shimmer right above them. So we have matte 1, matte 2, matte 3, and matte 4. I'm going to go ahead and do a second round on top of those last 3, just so maybe you could see them a little bit better. And then we have matte 5, matte 6, and matte 7. So you guys can see that black is a really decent black. This light brown, kind of like taupey, ashy, gray brown, was a super hard shadow to use, but a really great shadow to blend colors out with. It is what I used for blending today in my crease area, this like ashy, taupey brown. As you can see, the colors definitely don't have like a all too warm or an all too cool feel to them. But there's also not a huge amount of pigmentation to them, except for those darker colors. So like the browns and the black, definitely some pigmentation. But what I would say that this palette is great for is honestly that no makeup look, because that is truly what it provides. There's not much else that you can get out of this. You can take this, you know, warmer toned brown and put it all up in your crease and give your eye a little bit of a awake feeling. You can put this black in the outer V and like provide some kind of contour definition to your eye. But the rest of it is really just, you know, any one of these shades could go straight across the eyelid and provide some really pretty shimmer to it. But I have to honestly say, I just think that I have better, more blendable tones in my collection. I'm going to scooch over so I can put some pictures in here. I didn't get a whole lot of pictures. I'm sure every single one of you watching today knows that this just isn't my style of palette like it might have been when I first started doing makeup, because I really didn't do makeup. That's what this palette really caters to, is those people who just don't really do makeup, who want to look like they've done something with their face but don't really want to put in that effort, because you don't really need a whole lot of effort with this. Those darker tones do need a little bit more elbow work into blending. It saddens me because I have quite a few dips in this palette. I know that I used to use it. It used to be the only palette in my collection, but I am going to get rid of my Smashbox full exposure palette. It is going to go to the decluttered drawer because I just can't. I mean, God, I have, and it's not even about it being a neutral palette. Honestly, I've thought about keeping it because it's really the coolest tone neutral palette that I have. And maybe it'll stay in my collection for those reasons, but for now I'm going to put it into my declutter drawer, and I guess we'll see when I actually film the declutter of that drawer where it goes, because I am A, not a cool tone fan, B, or not a super cool tone fan, B, not a neutral fan. You'll know this. I don't know how many comments I read last week that said I just can't see you with that Smashbox palette. I did enjoy it. I did come up with some really pretty looks, but I just know me, and I know I have better palettes that I will gravitate towards before I will gravitate towards this one. So, you know, in the spirit of not holding on to something just for the sheer fact that it was the very first palette that I owned, and it's one of the only cool tone neutral palettes that I have, and that I might use it someday, and that I really did fall back in love with those shimmers, I'm gonna put it in my declutter drawer. So as a parting words to this palette, I will say that it performs just as well without a primer as it does with. I think that it blends on bare skin just as easily as it does onto a primer. The pigmentation, because it's barely there in the first place, is barely there with a primer on as well. So like, you don't need a primer to make this work. I also think that if you are a Bobbi Brown cosmetics fan, this is right up that alley. I have to say that there's not much in the realm of Smashbox that I have found that I absolutely have fallen in love with. This palette I did used to use all the time, but I think it's just because it was the only palette in my collection. It really didn't wear makeup, and it's so lacking in pigmentation that it didn't scare me. I have tried multiple Smashbox things, and if you guys are familiar with my channel, you know that some of the things in my collection that I've tried by Smashbox are actually some of the products, and they're the least liked products in my collection. Their stick foundation comes to mind. The primerizer, not my favorite. The Smashbox photo finish setting spray, also not my favorite. I'm just not a Smashbox fan. For those of you new to my channel, I do have a Samsung Note 9, and to pick my palettes, I use an app that I found in our Play Store, which is our version of the App Store, and it is called, if I can find it, my phone updated so I can't find anything now. It is called the Decide Now app. This is what it looks like. It's just a Wheel of Fortune app, and you can find it even on the iOS system, just maybe with a different name. So what this is a Wheel of Fortune type app. You tell it what you want to decide by putting all those things into this wheel. When I use a palette for Palette Roulette, I do take that palette out, and as we get new palettes in after I have hauled them with y'all, I do put them in. So we have been through 69, well 70, because we did have one episode with 2 palettes. We've been through 70 palettes so far, and I am going to choose one for next week. I am really excited actually, because it's been a long damn time since we played with some Juvia's Place. We got Juvia's Place Deuce, which is funny because it's like the complete opposite of this. Maybe I'll carry this around with me during this week. Let me be right back. I'm gonna go get that palette. All right, this is Juvia's Place Deuce. This is the palette that we have for this coming week, and this is what it looks like. I forgot that it did have some like neutral tones in here, so I'm probably not going to hang on to this one and bring it with me. But you guys, I don't play with this palette enough. I actually really love the Juvia's Place formula. I really love this palette. It's got some good pinks. It's got a green. This one's actually a green too, even though it kind of looks gray in your screen. But this one's a really pretty like duochrome, and then it's got some really nice, you know, neutral tone shadows as well to pair with it. This pink is really nice. It's got a good amount of mattes versus shimmers, so I'm super excited to use this week. I hope that you guys are excited to see what I do with this palette and come back next week to listen to my thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that you guys liked this video enough that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. I also hope that you liked it, or me, enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel, coming back, seeing my thoughts on this Deuce palette next week. I do upload content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then every other Sunday as well. And I hope to see you in my comments section. Let me know what palette you're using for your palette a week, if you're doing a palette a week. And until next time, guys.